Welcome along to the NFL Week 13 Best Bets Matchbook podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined, as always, by Judah, Drew, and Sam. We've got a really good team. We won't spend much on Week 12. It was Thanksgiving, so some of the games nearly 10 days ago by the time the next games come around on Sunday. Sam, quick shout out to you. You got your best long shot up, your best bet, and nearly did the clean sweep on the podcast.
Yeah, so close. I wanted that clean sweep so bad, but it wasn't to be. We go again. Hopefully this week we'll all get 6 out of 6.
Yeah, absolutely. And Drew's been flying the flag on the long shots. It came to a crashing end, Drew.
Yeah, not only the one that we played, but my alternates all lost too. So it was those are the way it goes. Although thankfully we didn't hit the Serbian middle. Sam's Cowboys alt spread got in there easily. So I don't know. This is a fun week. I'm kind of struggling to find a lot of action this week, but I do have some pretty sincere kind of macro thoughts. So I'll try to weave those in, even if we don't have lots of plays.
Yeah, no, that sounds good, Drew. And to be fair, when I backed the Commanders and when they were out of the picture, I was praying that Serbian middle wasn't hit, and somehow it wasn't. So fair play, Sam. Judah, it's football season. You're getting a lot of traction with your charts and graphs. It feels like the fanboys of certain players are waiting for you to pick the right time to show their player in the top right of that graph, and then they go with those quote tweets. It took off there last night.
Those scatter plots seemingly riling up the fans. I mean, I guess if that's what works. But we're in the thick of it. We need stuff to talk about that's different from the kind of week to week matchup handicapping. But I love all of it, and I'm thankful to be doing this in the thick of the season.
Yeah,
can I make a quick comment on the charts? I first of all, I love them. Don't ever comment. I try to like them when I see them. But you have the cornerback one come up today, and I was like, oh, I always love that one because like cornerback evaluation is a black box for even for organizations. I feel like organizations like the Texans who just cut their best corner. What? Did you see this? Steven Nelson hits the wire. There's no one on that team that is doing well coverage except for Steven Nelson, and now he's been jettisoned, which is making me question everything I know about sort of the Texans' decision making, especially all of the flowers being given to that GM office for picking CJ Stroud, and we don't really know that that's what happened. So it's kind of fascinating, perception of Houston right now.
Okay, and then it's interesting. We do cover the Texans in the first game when they host the Denver Broncos, the informed team at the moment in the NFL. Some would argue we're also covering the Lions, Saints, Niners, Eagles is the main game, but we are going in race card order effectively. And then Sunday Night Football, Chiefs at Packers. Before we get going, if you're watching on YouTube, as always, all we ask takes 2 seconds to hit that like button. Be much appreciated, but do get involved. We much appreciate the comments on social and YouTube. But let's get straight into it and start with Broncos at Texans. And Sam, this was a game you want to talk about, so we'll have a quick look at the betting and bring you in. We've got the Broncos at 262 on the money line, the Texans heavy favorite at 157. Point spread sees Broncos get a 3.5 head start, that key number obviously at 192, and the total here is 46.5, and 1.9 is the over and slight favorite. So yeah, Sam, take it away. The Denver Broncos. I mean, Russell Wilson, is he cooking?
Yeah, this is why I was so keen to talk about this, because five wins in a row now. Only the Eagles have matched that. It's kind of incredibly surprising when you look at coming into the season. He basically become a bit of a joke, a bit of a meme. The first couple of weeks were really not good for the team. Not necessarily too bad for Russ, actually, but for the team, really poor. And since then, they've turned things around in incredible style. Russell Wilson, the second highest QB rating in the league, I think, right now, in the red zone, that is. Third and fourth down, the third highest QB rating. He is performing well. And the defense has absolutely arrived this past month or so, seemingly out of nowhere. They've got 22 turnovers on the season. And in the past 5 weeks alone, they've had 16, which is a number that half the league haven't even reached across 12 weeks yet. So I think that is incredibly interesting from a number of points, and we have to applaud Vance Joseph for that. But I do think, particularly with that defensive stat, that is an anomaly. That can't keep happening. If that is being baked into these numbers at all, then I have to go the other way. I really enjoy watching the Texans. They obviously come into this off the back of a loss, but I mean, if that Tank Dell touchdown had stood, things would be very different. I just think they're such a well-balanced team in general. So for me, I'd go Texans -3.5, but this is one of those games I think could really go either way. But just everything I've seen from CJ Stroud has just impressed me so much. Playing at such a high level, and I ultimately most of the time I want to have my money on the team that has the quarterback that I really believe in, and he's a guy I'd follow him through a brick wall, going to battle for him. I love the guy. I love how he plays, and yeah, give me the Texans, please.
Okay, even money 2.0 Texans -3.5 current handicap on the Matchbook betting exchange. Judah, for you, look, we've seen the NFL teams can put winning runs together where they're not necessarily playing the best. What have you made of this Broncos winning run, first of all, and where are you thinking for a bet in this game?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of luck and kind of positive variance. I mean, 25% of opponents' drives are ending in fumbles. It could be that the Broncos are the best team in the history of the league at forcing fumbles. I think more likely is the fact that they got lucky with the number of fumbles they forced and lucky with the number that they recovered. Also, so many of those have been in deep in opponents' territory, which sets up quick fields. But what I think is very interesting about the Broncos is we may have talked about this last week, but this is a team that basically decided they were going to go from a neutral pass team in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season to be an extremely run-heavy team, not let Russell Wilson throw the ball. And that's kind of coincided with this win streak. But if you look at the offensive efficiency numbers, the team is tanked. It's like they're 25th in efficiency as opposed to 16th where they were beforehand. This offense has been really, really bad. And I don't think that is, just some noise. Like if you're going to run with a pretty bad run game and forcing Russell Wilson to throw in more of these kind of 3rd and long situations, he's not going to be good. I think this is kind of fundamentally a bottom 4th, 25th percentile type of offense. And I think on the Texans side, what's kind of flying under the radar in my view is we highlighted early in the season, CJ Stroud was really, really good kind of when given a clean pocket to work with. And he was able to take advantage downfield. What's happened over the past, 6-7 weeks is that CJ Stroud has been unbelievable in his pocket presence, at evading pressure. We're talking about these scatter plots. I posted a chart about your ability to extend the play after pressure arrives and how often you take a sack. It's like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and the next guy is CJ Stroud, which is something that's happened in the past couple of weeks. And I think that's particularly important to note because CJ Stroud, I think, is going to be kind of less matchup dependent. He's going to put up yards, I think, at least based on the traits that we're seeing, no matter who his opponent is. And I think we have a far, far superior Texans offense here. And I'm happy to lay the points because I don't think this Broncos team, if they're not getting turnovers, is not going to generate much offense. This is a Texans defense that can generate pressure. That's something that Wilson has struggled with. I just see this as a far superior offense going up against a Broncos team, which has been kind of pushed up by the market by virtue of what I think are some fluky wins and not some kind of material good fundamental play.
Okay, Sam and Judah laying the points with the Texans. Drew, for you, credit to Sean Payton for getting this winning run going, despite maybe a little bit of luck in there, because considering they conceded 70+ points in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think credit to health even more than Sean Payton. That was really what turned around this defense. And actually, a correction and retraction for me. I'm still on my first cup of coffee, fighting a cold here, playing injured.
Playing through. We're playing through
it.
That's what CBS
it was Shaq Griffin. Shaq Griffin is their clear best performing cornerback for the Texans so far this year, and they just cut him this morning, weirdly. So I don't know if that has to do with they think the guys behind him are getting healthy and need the snaps, but really, really strange. That said, you know who has 3 outstanding corners that will all be healthy and all be on the field and have kind of driven the success of the Denver Broncos defense this last fortnight? It is the Denver Broncos. Patrick Surtain is unquestionably understood to be a lockdown corner, but you're getting outstanding production so far from Fabian Moreau and Jaquan McMillan. And I look at the way the linebacking core is playing right now and am quite impressed, at least in the improvement that they have been able to stop the run. If there is a weakness of the Denver Broncos defense, it is still the run, but they all of a sudden have one of the better, if not the best pass defense going right now in the NFL. And I think that definitely matches up well against the Texans here. So it's going to be tough. Even Judah's points are fair, even with extended windows, even though the Texans have found ways to keep CJ Stroud upright despite all of the injuries to their offensive line. He's going to have to throw into perilously tight windows in this game. And it's definitely not clear to me what the right plan of attack here is for the Texans. I also worry about the Texans, a lot of things with the coaching decisions and with the kind of front office decisions, as kind of, we were just talking about. Dameon Pierce is healthy again. Dameon Pierce is one of the worst running backs in the NFL, if not the worst. They're giving him enough of a usage share to just completely stymie the offense at times. The 1 week they pivoted to Devin Singletary, who had fresh legs. He was absolutely unstoppable. And that was obviously like a little bit of a flash in the pan as opposed to something that's sustainable based on what we saw last week against the Jaguars. And also notable that, when the Jaguars needed a key stop at the end of that game, you can credit Josh Allen, the pass rusher, for his ability to win 1v1, but it's definitely a problem that your pass rush can be as effective as the Jags were in that moment to kind of prevent the Texans from getting the game tying field goal opportunity any closer than 58 yards. So, there are warning signs around this Texans team. I ultimately still think they'll be in the playoff mix in the AFC because their remaining schedule is quite weak. A win here against the Broncos is pretty much puts them in the playoffs, in my opinion. Because number one, you're keeping the Broncos one further step away. And number two, I think they're probably going to be favored in the last 5 games, by meaningful margin if they win this one. Kind of the one consequential game left on their schedule is probably week 18 at Indianapolis. Everything else, you're playing Jets, Tennessee, Cleveland, Tennessee. That middle 4 stretch right there, those are some pretty horrific quarterbacks you're up against. And then, you close with the Colts. So that the Texans win this game, they probably win out. But 3.5 is too much for me against a very, very live defense. Now, the Broncos have been interesting for a lot of the reasons these guys mentioned. They have been getting by in a lot of ways on offense by creating short fields with the fumbles. I completely agree that's unsustainable, but to me, that just means the Broncos are going to be fighting tooth and nail for points here, even up against the Texas defense that's not outstanding. Final kind of thought here, going with sort of unit rankings currently by market. Market makes the Denver defense 15th best, and Denver offense 15th best, Denver defense 24th best. No way. There's no way this is a league average offense for the Broncos, and there is no way that this is a below league average defense. Those numbers are backwards. I would make Broncos right now as currently constituted top 10 defense and bottom 10 offense, and matched up against this Texans team with the way that Texans can't really generate run, and that being the one way you want to attack the Broncos. This is absolutely screaming under 47.5 to me. So. I think it's going to be a slog of a game. I hope the Texans get a win. I'd like to see CJ Stroud in the playoffs. I don't want him to hit a rookie wall, but concerned about some of the direction of that organization, and definitely don't love their matchup offensively to get over 21 points here. So give me under 47.
Okay, so good cases for the Texans laying the points, -3.5 for Sam, -5.5 for Judah. And Drew might have got me there with the unders, under 47.5. All these bets from the guys will be available on insights.matchbook.com, or just search Matchbook Insights in your search bar browser. We will go to the second game here. Yes, Drew.
Can I get a comment from Sam or Judah? Do you feel confident in the Texans scoring points to get your home, or are you basically just saying you don't believe in the Broncos scoring points?
I believe in the Texans, I think.
Yeah. I think it's starting to follow and that's kind of why I brought up the Stroud point on his ability to, his pocket awareness, let's call it, which is that I think Stroud's entering like matchup agnostic territory, where it's like he's going to, as well as CJ Stroud plays, the ceiling is always there, and the matchup is basically irrelevant towards that ceiling.
Okay. Fascinating point, CJ Stroud to perhaps get the Texans home. And listen, they could both win both the unders and the Texans laying the points We'll go to the Lions at Saints, Sunday, 6 o'clock in the UK. Take a look at the betting that we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. You can back the Lions 1.5 here, Saints 278. Point spread sees Saints get a 4-point head start, and the total here is 46. We'll go to you, Judah, here. Look, both these teams coming off pretty disappointing losses last week. Where are you at in terms of their potential seasons going into this game?
Yeah, I think the Saints kind of have been this like wide, roller coaster of variance the entire season, where it's like 1 week you're like, oh, they're obviously going to run away with the NFC South, and the next you're like, how did they lose this game? And I think a lot of that has to do with coaching and their quarterback. But I don't think that outlook has not changed from last week for the Saints. I still you don't know which team you're going to get. And that's kind of like the futures view of it. In that, like, I think that same sentiment of like, this is clearly the best team in the NFC South is true. And they're also going to lose a bunch of bad games. The Lions, I'd be a little bit concerned with Jared Goff. Watching that game, I was like really, really convinced that Jared Goff had like a hand injury. Both of the fumbles were him just like dropping the ball. He usually like throws these kind of like knucklers, but they were just a lot of like wobbly passes that almost looked like he was really dealing with a hand injury. I don't know what that was about. I'd be a little bit concerned with the Lions going forward, but I still think it's important to understand the kind of base rate here, and that is that the Lions are a far better team. Their defense is not particularly good, but I don't think the Saints can take advantage of that, especially when they're going to be trotting out like A.T. Perry and Taysom Hill as their receivers. Rashid Shaheed looks like he's going to miss this game. He's got a pretty serious quad injury. Chris Olave is in the concussion protocol. I got to lean no at this point that he's going to come back. And I mean, this is just not a particularly good offense. With those guys, they're not that great. Without them, I think this is like an abysmal team on offense. And the Lions are going to score. They have the running game, which is effectively, matchup agnostic at this point. They just ran all over the Bears. They've run all over a lot of teams, and that's going to, I think, give them a decent floor to at least score points. And I don't think the Saints are going to be able to keep up. And if we get Jared Goff, by the way, in a dome that matters, and he would shock me at all if he just reverts back to week 8 Jared Goff. Of course not. In which case, this game is very, very underpriced considering the Saints' current health.
Okay, Judah, seems there's upside with the Lions. You lean that way, Drew. Look, a lot of people would have watched that Thanksgiving game against the Packers, thought they were very disappointed. Thought the highlight for the whole game for me, to be honest, was Jack Harlow at halftime. Thought he did very well, despite what Twitter might tell you. But in the actual game themselves, Lions weren't quite at it.
Yeah, I know. Lions tried to ruin my Thanksgiving. They did a good job of ruining my Week 12. And we learned, but I learned a ton from that game. So I think it's worth kind of revisiting. If you have PTSD like me, I would still rewatch it. Judah's points about Goff are fair, but I don't think it's a hand injury. I just think it's because he has tiny freaking hands. But the bigger problem for the Lions is they're not a come from behind by margin team unless they're playing the Bears, apparently. And functionally they were rostered. They are schemed and rostered well to run the football against a team like the Packers all day long. And as soon as you have this fluky turnover that makes it a 2-score margin, they got away from sort of their identity, their principal game plan, and they just never felt fluid at all on offense. And they were basically fighting into the teeth of the Packers defense instead of how you want to attack them in the soft underbelly. And then that was basically the game. Credit to Jordan Love for coming out and, playing as well as he did in the first half. Snapped kind of a pretty poor run of performances of first halves. And I kind of want to credit that to the fact that it was a short week and, a lot of changing parts, and maybe it was a little bit more backyard football as opposed to structured stuff, but who knows? Anyway, the Lions, I do still think, are schemed extremely well for attacking the Saints now. The Saints' run defense has completely imploded. Something's going on with Demario Davis. He was kind of the linchpin of this defense for the last however many years. I've lost count. He's playing through some sort of injury, and it is not going well. No sign that you're going to get reinforcements here from Marshawn Lattimore, who definitely matters against, with his ability to kind of Compliment Paulson and Debo, who's having a great season. No semblance of a pass rush for the Saints. So the defense has all kinds of questions right now, and they're just not impressing whatsoever. Got utterly run off the field against the Falcons. And I know the Falcons have a unique rushing attack, but that was embarrassing. I think the Lions can absolutely replicate that success on the ground. And then how in the world the Saints are going to keep up, I have no clue. Derek Carr is performing miserably right now. He looks like he is still not right. He hasn't been right since his first shoulder injury, apparently, and continues to re-injure it or something like that. And now you take away his two best weapons in Olave and Shaheed, and this is all of a sudden like a truly toothless offense. I kind of want to temper my hate for the Saints and the loss of those players because they weren't using them correctly anyway. So it's almost like, yeah, well, you lost you super important players, but if you weren't using them, who cares? But that said, it still should matter somewhat, especially if they're in comeback mode here against the Lions. So I'm pretty much there where I'm into this Lions play, and I don't think it's going to move off the 4 necessarily, but I was waiting for some injury information on the Saints, particularly their defense, just to kind of secure this look here. But the Lions defense is a massive problem. I don't think it's going to cost them the NFC North. I don't think it's going to move them out of the 3 seed, but it is going to make them a very, very, very soft home playoff team when we get there. And I think if you can figure out who the 6 seed is, if you want to try to grab a little equity on them to win the NFC right now, I think that team very well may be in the Final 4. And I have a candidate that I will save for the end of the show.
I was like, please give it to us now, Drew. Please give it to us now. The leading Lions in this particular game for Drew, not an official bet, but Judah is locking in the Lions -5.5, and the run seems to be the key for that game. So, well, we're checking that out. We'll go to you, Sam, because you were hard pass for the last game. Well, this is some game in store here, to be honest. The Niners at the Eagles. Let's have a look at the betting first and then start talking about it. The Niners, 171 favorites. Eagles, 232. We'll get into the favors and the right favorites and all that. Niners are laying 2.5 points at 188, and the total for this game is 46.5. Sam, I've got to admit, I was slightly surprised to see the Niners in this favorite spot here. I thought maybe the Eagles are a coin flip. What were your thoughts when the line came out initially?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm surprised the Niners are the favorites. I mean, I'm not surprised, and I am back in the Niners, so I think they are the better team. But given the home advantage that we know that the Eagles do have, I was a little surprised to see it was quite this close, especially coming off an important win anyway last week. But for me, I have to take the Niners. I'm going 6.5, get a few more extra points off, try and increase the return slightly. I just feel like I will back this Niners team against anyone in the league. I think they are on their day the best team in the league. And I think I said this last week. I think I might have said this a couple of times this season. I still think this Eagles team, I'm not going to say fraudulent, but I don't think they are as good as the record would suggest. They're not the highest scoring team in their own division. They're not the highest defense. Sorry, they're not the best defense in their own division. And I think there's been a number of games where they've kind of edged through. And admittedly, that's partly an incredible mentality that they have there that the Cowboys, for example, don't necessarily have. But I just don't think they're quite as good as the 10-1 record suggests. And I'm just going to take the Niners here because I think they are going to get through them ultimately. And whilst the Eagles are great against the run, I think 3rd least rushing yards allowed per game, they're not particularly good against the pass. And although I think so much of the 49ers identity involves Christian McCaffrey in the ground game, they have the best coach in football. He will find a way to kind of get through the air against this Eagles team. Brock Purdy, I was very harsh on him earlier in the season. Judah was sticking up for him early in the season. I hold my hands up. I think I was definitely wrong on that. He is playing at a very high level, with the exception of I guess the game where he suffered a concussion, and probably the game after that, I think he was really poor as well. But other than that, he's been really good. And I just look at this Niners team, and I don't see a huge amount of weaknesses. And I just have to take them here.
Okay. Niners -6.5. Drew, like you identified the over for the Bills Eagles game. So I was watching with just a bit of Bills equity, and I've thought about your over briefly at halftime, going, well, that's in the bin, the rain, the conditions. I know there were a few chances, but that second half livened up. And while the Eagles for maybe 2/3 or maybe 3/4 of that game were not at it at all, I still was very impressed with how they finished the game. But I guess Bills ultimately were the better team there. So you're leaning for the total here rather than the Niners Eagles. But for you, is this the right favorites here? Has the market got it about right?
Yeah, so there's something kind of unique about this game and the way the market is pricing this that I think is important to call out. And that is that at this current price, if you're laying the Niners, you're basically making a statement that their offense is going to perform above meeting expectation and the Eagles defense is going to perform below. And I think that's a reasonable expectation considering the fact that the Eagles defense has some schematic problems that match up poorly against the Niners, and the fact that they were on the field for 40 minutes and 94 plays while the Niners get 10 days to prepare. Also, if you want to add in wrinkles like whatever kind of, sort of tendency breakers, whatever kind of, surprises that the 49ers have in their arsenal, which I'm sure are quite impressive. Now is the time to deploy. Like there's, your only chance to really catch the Eagles for the 1 seed is to beat them in this game and then have them stumble down the stretch while you continue to win. So this is a pretty high leverage situation to kind of empty the playbook if you're the Niners. And, that all kind of stews together to tell you that the Niners potential for, a pretty high output in terms of point total, I think is real. And I think that's what people betting into the Niners are kind of counting on, because, there are definitely questions about the pass rush for the Eagles being able to generate a little bit of pressure here. Brock Purdy's been masterful under pressure all season. In fact, all of his career. Doesn't seem flapped by some pressure, but this Eagles pass rush has had a couple of weeks where they haven't generated much, and they've gone up against some of the better offensive lines in the NFL, particularly the interior offensive lines of the Chiefs and the Bills are just outstanding. And so the fact that guys like Carter and Davis and Reddick, they haven't really been able to generate much pressure. I think that is probably going to be a little different here. There will be some times where the Niners are under pressure, but this Eagles secondary is quite poor. The Eagles are quite poor up the spine. And I think the Niners are going to be able to, assuming that they continue to do what they do and put their chess pieces in the right place, they're going to have no problem, I think, scoring in this game. Weather being sort of the X factor, although it looks like it's trending a little bit less gross. So hopefully there's not like lots of rain here and lots of wind. But that always is something to keep an eye on when you're in the month of November and you're playing anything based on a points expectation. So if the Niners are scoring here, the question is, can the Eagles answer? And I have kind of given up in any way, shape, or form fading this Eagles defense. Part of the reason of backing the Bills last week was the understanding or expectation or assumption that Jalen Hurts was still relatively one-dimensional, and that was completely not a factor. He was extremely, extremely effective on the ground in that game. And if he is all of a sudden right, his shoulder's not bothering him, obviously. He's still underthrowing balls, but in today's NFL refereeing environment, that's a good thing. And he has the most dynamic 1-2 wide receiver core that's currently healthy in the NFL, and it's by a margin. So this is going to be an opportunity for the Eagles to score an answer, I think. And I don't really see either of these teams running away with this game. Expecting something like 24-24 in the fourth quarter is, I think, pretty reasonable. The Eagles, I think it's worth noting, they're just playing a different game than everyone else because their short yardage tush push is so impossibly effective.
It's a joke.
That they're like, I was broken trying to model their offense because you have to take into account the fourth down aggressiveness that they operate with. But then any type of third and short, fourth and short is almost an automatic first down for these guys. Every goal to go situation, they're going to get there and just, push, and they're in. And it's very, very difficult to price these guys. And I think their wide receivers matched up against the Niners pass defense without Hufanga is a problem. The Niners secondary is not good. And I think they live by getting, a super effective pass rush out of Bosa, Hargrave and Chase Young now. And if they sputter at all up against a very good pass protecting Eagles offensive line, then, this has a chance to really get out of control score wise. I think it probably should be under 3 in a neutral situation. I'm fine with the Niners as favorites considering the situational angles. But I think the total is kind of poorly priced at 46.5. I think this should be in the 48.5, 49 range.
Okay. The big play for the over there from Drew. Judah, so the Eagles, like there's a lot to go at with this game. They're obviously 10-1, but I think the guys that both alluded to there that they still can be caught. They lose this game, they lose to the Cowboys. All of a sudden, the playoff picture looks so much different. So it's another massive game for the Eagles. The complete opposite last year with their schedule. But yeah, we're getting this prime time in the UK and Ireland. It's I'm just really looking forward to this. But make the case for the Eagles here at home.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, Drew actually just made my case in the last.
I saw you nodding a lot. Yeah,
his
the
point,
touch push.
Yeah, I agree with everything Sam said. I just think I reached different conclusions. And the main way, just to kind of reiterate what Drew was saying, I think if you just stripped everything away from the teams except for like the tush push and like how well the Eagles make decisions, like they're playing a 55-45 game. Like they just have a huge edge to everyone else, strip away like all talent. And I don't think the market has any way of pricing that. As Drew was saying, it's very difficult to do. I don't think anyone knows how to do it. And you're kind of going back to the same, way you would price any other game without accounting for it, because you don't have a particular like angle to just like turn the knob for the Eagles. That's the first part of this. And really, this is just a numbers play. Like I do think, Sam, I think you're right. I think the Eagles are not as good as their record. That's certainly true. I think the Niners are the best team in the NFL, but implying that they're 4.5 points or 4 points better than the Eagles is just way too much for me, especially considering the fact that the Eagles just have such an advantage in exactly the areas we were talking about in-game management and the way they can kind of make fourth down decisions. And ultimately, I think, as Drew was saying, the matchup sets up pretty well for the Eagles in as much as it does the Niners, which is that the Eagles, their strength is their pass protection. Certainly, if you can kind of get past the Niners pass rush, their secondary has been pretty bad, and the Eagles have the wide receivers to kind of take advantage of that in Smith and Brown. And I think the Goddard injury matters a little bit less, and he might be back for this week. In that, like, you can really expose these Niners corners. The Eagles are going to score points. I think they are playing a just different game than the rest of the teams in the NFL, and implying 4.5 points is just too much. As much as I love the Niners this season.
Yeah, and I think to kind of just jump on playing a different game and why this is hard to predict and why, like, you have your hands of, you can get free available data to model the NFL at a rate that at a magnitude that never existed in history. But all of the success rate, EPA, all of that framework is not built on what the Eagles are doing. So you can take their stats and they don't look like otherworldly, but then you actually run it through like a play-by-play sim. You try to set up, like, let's simulate this game like possession by possession, and it's just nothing that's historically based on the records and the data we have can capture how impossible it is to get this team off the ground when they absolutely have to get a score. And so, when they're up against, an all universe defense, maybe things are different, but I don't put the Niners there. So it's going to be tough to stop these Eagles this year, I think. And, I'm at least changing my tune. I'm not trying to catch the Pico top on these guys anymore, because, they could continue to build into an offense that's truly unstoppable. And Lane Johnson, we didn't mention him. That injury matters. Like, if he's not available in this game, then all of a sudden the pass rush for the Niners is a bigger factor. And then Jalen Hurts' mobility is more important. And maybe there are some drives that stall because they're just in third and forever. But they're so rarely in third and forever that it's just hard for me to wrap my head around that actually happening. So we shall see. But I think I had eyes to bet the Niners this week. And, the more I kind of match up their Eagles pass, the wide receivers against the Niners secondary, I can't get there.
Yeah, Judah, you want to come in there before we finish up?
I was just gonna say, I think Lane Johnson's probably like 90% to play.
Oh, okay.
So that is.
Well, I feel great about the over.
Figuring it out as we go along, but the 3 completely different angles there, to be fair. 2, you can basically back both offenses with the over, but the Niners laying 6.5 for Sam, and Eagles +3 for Judah. To be honest, really looking forward to that game. If it's anything like last Sunday, we are in for a treat, particularly with even more on the line in this game. Obviously, we'll go to Sunday Night Football. Chiefs at Packers here. The Chiefs. What is going on there? The Chiefs 1.4 money line, Packers 3.3, and the Chiefs are laying 6 points currently on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Really competitive price at the moment, and the total is 42.5. Even money the over. Drew, I say the Chiefs because they go 14-0 down, and yet they cover the spread of whatever it kicked off at. I think it was 9.5. So I think that just maybe sums up the season. There's, the Raiders managed to get some early joy there. Going into Green Bay here, are you expecting the Chiefs to cover, or is there a expectation that they're maybe stuck in a little bit of a rut, or at least at the start of some of these games?
Yeah, I don't know.
Good answer.
I think the Chiefs are a very, very hard handicap right now because there's not a lot that they're doing that's especially incredible, but they still have the best player in football with the ball in his hands on every offensive snap. And so it's tough to ever really discount these guys. And as long as Mahomes is healthy, as long as Kelsey is healthy, and as long as Andy Reid is involved in the construction of the offense, you have to assume that this is going to be, an offense that's capable of scoring into the 30s on any given day. And I think they match up pretty well against the Packers defense. The Chiefs want to generate a lead and then put it away on the ground. They want to kind of put the playbook away in the second half and just shorten the game and just sustain drives and call it a night early. And I think against the Packers defense, if you can generate a lead in the first half and put them on their heels a little bit, that sets you up well to kind of force Jordan Love to get it done against a very effective pass defense. Now, there has been some slippage in the Chiefs defense of late, and some of it might be related to the quality of opponent, but we saw them shine against AOC and the Raiders, who stink. But at the same time, it's kind of good proof of concept that maybe some of the slippage was based on some of the strength of opponent in the prior weeks. That said, I believe in the secondary for the Chiefs quite a lot, and I think they match up well against the young Packers core here to keep the Packers in a spot where they're going to have difficulty early, and then the Chiefs can put this thing away on the ground late. So my fare on this one is closer to 7 than 6, so I laid 6, but it is a really weak play, and I'm being somewhat hopeful that the Packers lose, not for any particular reason, but just because I think this team ultimately will be in the playoff mix. They're good enough, and their schedule after this Chiefs game is weak enough that they could sprint to the finish here and win all the remaining games. And so I would like a little bit of the kind of dawning of how excellent the Packers are that everyone came to after seeing them on Thanksgiving. I'd like a little bit of cold water thrown on that on Sunday Night Football, so that the market just cools enough to get some decent bets on the Packers to make the playoffs, because they are substantially better than the other candidates right now. I mean, the teams like Seattle, Minnesota in particular, who are currently kind of on the fringes or occupying playoff spots, like I would make Green Bay meaningful favorites over these teams right now. There's a spot there waiting for them if they can get it together. And if they beat the Chiefs, they're almost certainly in. I look at their remaining games against the Giants, Tampa, Carolina, Minnesota, Chicago. Like, they can win all 5 of those after this contest. And I'd like the Chiefs to just do their damn jobs and get a win here, and then we can fire on some Packers after this week.
Yeah. Always thinking ahead, Drew. I love it. And I'm sort of putting the schedule in my head where they're at. And let's buy them at the lowest point possible. I love that. Sam, a little bit on what Drew said on maybe the Chiefs being that inconsistent team, and we don't really know where we're at with them. And then the Packers, they're playing well, but I guess this is probably definitely a tough game for them at home.
Yeah, I think something Drew said there that just absolutely nail on head for me is how difficult they are to handicap when you have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, who is capable of he could probably drag me and a couple of my friends to the playoffs if he really wanted to. Obviously, that's not true. I should clarify that. I find them such a hard team to kind of wrap my head around at the moment. On some ways, you see sort of Rashee Rice sort of really kind of breaking out these last month or so. It looks like he's finally got a receiver. Obviously, the first one since Tyreek, but I don't know. It doesn't fill me with a huge amount of confidence either. I don't really know why I don't trust them, especially when their defense is better than it's been at any time in Mahomes' tenure so far. So, yeah, for me, I'm going for the under here. I'm not hugely confident about this, but I feel like it just kind of leaps out as the only way I would really feel any confidence whatsoever playing this game. Chiefs defense as I said, pretty good this season. Very good, actually. 16.5 points per game allowed. Packers defense is just over 20. And admittedly, there are some injuries in that defense. So how much of that do you really kind of play into? But the Chiefs, they have this sort of habit. I think we spoke about this earlier in the year, is they rarely seem to get away from teams when they should. They just let the team hang with them for more than they really should. And I know probably the exception to that was actually last week against the Raiders. They got a sizable lead. But I just don't overly trust them. And I don't think they're going to score a ton of points because they seem to not really be doing that this season. Packers, I think there will be some cold water poured on them. I think this is by far their hardest matchup remaining. And then, yeah, for me, Chiefs 2-5 on the road in terms of the over hitting, with the Packers 1-4 at home in terms of the over hitting. So this just screams to me a low scoring game. So under 42.5 is my pick. I don't feel particularly good about it, but sometimes you've got to take these ones.
Jude, do you think I'm crazy believing in the Chiefs here? And do you think the Packers win out?
I think the Packers can win out. I don't think you're crazy for believing in the Chiefs, but I'd also certainly be concerned with how this offense has looked. I mean, like, they've performed at probably 12th to 13th best offense over the last 6-7 weeks. And much of their season's production has come against defenses when the Bears were the worst pass defense in NFL history earlier this season.
Sure.
And the Raiders. I think the key point with the Packers, though, is let's look at this core. Let's look at how young everyone is. Is it at all surprising that this team has gotten a lot better as the season's gone along? Of course not. Young players get better in the NFL. This happens all the time. The idea that Jordan Love has gotten better, certainly, and a lot of the deep variants that we were talking about early in the season, where he was throwing deep a ton and just no one was kind of connecting on those passes. I think they've also really kind of allowed Dontavian Wicks to get a lot more run in this offense, and he's been terrific. Obviously, it didn't matter in Thanksgiving when he was out, but this is a team with a lot of depth and a lot of really good young players, and they're performing incredibly well. And over the last 7-8 weeks, whatever it is, 6 weeks, 10, however you want to slice up that sample, in recent times, if we just time weighted their recent play, they've performed better on offense than the Chiefs. And I don't think that's it would be particularly surprising for that to continue in this week. I'd still be very bullish on the Chiefs long term, just because for all of the reasons you mentioned, and they're still the Chiefs. They still have that elite upside with Mahomes and Reed. That will always be true. But you got to give Rashee Rice a full slate of snaps here. It's absurd. He's clearly better than all the other guys. I don't quite understand that.
I think they have to know that, and they're just keeping him under wraps a bit. I bet you see his usage continue to ramp as we get to the playoffs here. But but the one thing I want to add, this team Justin Herbert made this defense look pedestrian. If it were not for some key drops, Chargers scored 30 in that game, and it's not competitive, right? And that's in the back of my head about, okay, well, what happens when you run into an elite passer, right? They're schemed well defensively to stop the good, the bad, the middle class and the bad, right? But when they come up against the elite passers, they do seem to get pretty exposed. And so, I think there's a chance the Packers, and also young team does their job that well on Thanksgiving, reading their own headlines a little bit this week, preparing a little bit less focused. Yeah. There's possible that the extra time to prepare here is not necessarily going to afford the Packers an advantage. I think that's actually possible. Final question for Judah then. Let's assume the Packers lose this game and then win out. Let's say they get the 7th seed. They head to San Francisco to take on the Niners. The market is hot on the Packers at that point, or still low, or are they running into a buzzsaw when they're up against San Francisco on the road and the 2-7 wild card?
I think they're running into a buzzsaw. That is at least past a touchdown, probably closer to a touchdown and a field goal. But I just want to say, I think you brought up a really interesting point about what's lurking in your mind with Herbert and the Packers. And I totally agree. I think this Packers defense is just average in every such way. But I think that's exactly what's kind of fueling the Chiefs' love here. And I don't know if like Mahomes obviously is that quarterback in an abstract, but like they haven't put that performance on the field yet this year. And that's kind of exactly the discrepancy that I'm trying to capitalize on, which is like, would it be shocking? Of course not. But like, have they actually put that production on the field yet? No. And if we're taking a 1 week sample, like I will put more stock in what I've seen the last like 6-7 weeks than like the potential. But of course, it wouldn't be surprising. I'll be taking the Packers +6. I don't think I led with that.
Yeah, we get it. Yeah, so Packers +6.5. Drew laying the 0.6. Sam going for the unders, and of course the primetime unders have been tragic this year. Well, the primetime games have been tragic. That is. So you might be onto something there, Sam, for that alone. We will go to any other bets. Really fascinating 4 games. And for incidentally, insights.matchbook.com, or again, search Matchbook Insights to find a recap from Thursday morning. So, Judah, I want to start with you on the Cardinals. You're going to take them +5.5 at the Steelers. So talk to us a little bit about this.
Yeah, I'll keep this very simple. 5.5 points is way too many points for a Steelers offense, which has been dreadful. Granted, like Canada's fired, the offense is still the offense is going to be a little bit better, and they've been a little bit better as of late, but it still is a bottom offense. I think the Cardinals have a much better quarterback. I expect this to be a relatively low scoring game, and I don't think the Steelers can take advantage of the matchups that the Cardinals defense presents. Like they're not good enough on offense to fully take advantage of that, and the market is not pricing that as kind of the
Cardinals +5.5 currently even money. And Drew, just a quick mention that you are looking at the weather currently for a potential over to play here in the any other bets.
Yeah, I think it's live. The Cardinals defense has made really bad offenses look really good this year. I think there's a potential that, some of the yardage that the new regime was able to generate in the last matchup converts more points against the Cardinals team. And just in general, like, I don't know. I don't hate the idea of trying to fade the Steelers defense at all. I think that's one of the more overrated units going right now. They've gotten by playing against some bad quarterbacks, and they're doing fine, but I think there are ways to beat that team.
Okay, we will move on. Sam, I want you to take it away for any other bets, best long shots and best bets for a triple.
Yeah. So, start off any other bets. I'm taking an alt line, Jags -9.5. I feel like we're going to see a big performance from Jacksonville. Ultimately, the Bengals weren't particularly great against the Steelers last week, slumping to a 16-10 loss. I think Browning actually looked probably slightly better than we would have thought. Completed 19 of 26, scored a touchdown, admittedly had an interception as well, 96% quarterback rating. So he was okay, but the Steelers aren't good. I mean, earlier on, we talked about the Eagles' record flattering them a little bit. If the Eagles' record is flattering them a little bit, then the Steelers' record is straight up. How are they getting away with this? 7-4 is outrageous. And I think the Bengals couldn't defeat that team. Jacksonville will absolutely wallop the Bengals. Lawrence really kind of took a bit of a pasting against the Niners 3 weeks back. But since then, he's really kind of, I think, showed his abilities come to the fore a bit. 3 passing touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, just the 1 interception. And I think that we're going to see a team that's going to go and steadily progress and build towards the playoffs now. So Jags -9.5 for any other bets. My long shot is, I don't want to come over all Judah here, but I am taking the Commanders money line against the Dolphins. Simply, I'll be honest with you, I looked at all of these. There weren't a huge amount of dogs that I really kind of fancy putting my money behind. So to kind of take a bit of a footballing analogy, a bit of a soccer analogy, the new manager bounce, I do wonder whether having Jack Del Rio, the DB's coach, kind of leave will give that defense a bit of a bounce. Now we're going to see Riverboat Ron kind of getting more involved. I'm kind of very hopeful that it will. And ultimately, kind of one of the things that made me pick the Commanders here is the Dolphins on the road they just don't put up the same amount of points by quite a considerable amount. At home, they're putting up 38.8 points. Admittedly, we do have to take into account that Broncos game was absolutely obscene. But on the road, just 24.1 points. So there's a big discrepancy between the Dolphins on the road or at home. And we talked about this before, but with Sam Howell, this is a quarterback that I think offers real variance. He could he throw for 4 or 5 touchdowns? I think that's possible. It's certainly not probable, but it's definitely possible. And I think if I'm betting a big money line at big odds, 4.8, I want to take a team that kind of has slightly more variance. And for best bet, this is a big one for you, Dan. I'm going to Chargers
I'm not
-6.
sure. I'm not sure about this, Sam. But carry on.
Chargers -6. Look, I know they've struggled. Struggled. But the fault does not lie with Justin Herbert. If I was him, I would be absolutely livid. The way he's performed this season, and for the team to be quite that bad, it's hugely embarrassing. But this is less sort of less me saying that I think the Chargers are particularly good, but this is a real kind of thumbs down to the Patriots, who have just been woeful. Mac Jones, woeful. Bailey Zappi, just as bad. A team that's kind of run out of ideas. They're in no position, so no sort of real determination to try and fix things. I think particularly they've got one eye on the draft and on next season already. I think 6 points is a lot here. I'd potentially look at some higher lines as well, but 6.5, I'll take that all day. Getting over even money, I love that.
Yeah, I was still wired from the Bills-Eagles game and the excitement, so I managed to watch the first quarter of the Chargers game live anyway before watching it back, and we're absolutely robbed by officials in that first quarter. I think it needs to be said. So maybe, Sam, maybe there's still a bit of value there. We will move to the other guy's best long shots, and Drew, take it away. You've been the man in form all season. What's the record currently stand? 7-3, up over £300 for a £20 stake on the Matchbook Betting Exchange with your 2% commission. Do those singles on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. You will invariably get the best price. So, Drew, take it away.
Yeah, I can keep this pretty quick. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not a good enough team to be laying this kind of price, even against the Panthers team that has not generated much offense this year. But I'm counting more on the Panthers defense in this spot. I like that they're getting healthier. I like that the change in regime has does in the way that Sam put it, does have a little bit of a dead cat bounce whiff to it. It's possible that a lot of the kind of, end stages of that Frank Reich tenure there were driving some of the, confusion, indecision, and really just poor schematic, play by the Panthers offense. I'm not saying the Panthers offense has much of a potential to really bounce here, but they are at least going up against the Bucs unit that's dealing with a number of injuries, particularly in the secondary. This is it's a big price for two teams that kind of stink. And so I don't love getting involved with the bad teams on these, super long shots. But I don't think it's terrible to go on up against a Bucs team that's probably a hair overrated. Didn't really mention it, but Baker Mayfield had an MRI after the game. It was deemed no damage, structural damage, I think, to his ankle. But still, if you take away a little bit of his mobility, and if the Panthers D line shows up here and plays hard for Ajero Evero, who now is, he's putting his flag out there for his next opportunity. Panthers defense just being generally healthy, particularly in the secondary, I think is an important thing to keep an eye on. If they finish, the last home stretch here as playing like a top half of the league unit, I would not be surprised.
Okay, currently available at over 3.0. Judah, you landed the long shot with the Bears. 12-10, no touchdowns, just as you drew it up.
That's right. I have full belief in Cairo Santos, even after the first field goal here. I'm gonna go to the Packers. That obviously we just made the case for their +6. I think the argument here is that the Packers offense has outperformed the Chiefs offense over the last couple of months of the season. Do I necessarily expect that to continue in the long haul? No. Do I think the Packers offense is legitimately good? Absolutely. And in a one-game sample, when we're implying that the Chiefs are 8 points better, and I just don't think that kind of matches the reality of the past couple of months. If those kind of trends hold, if the Packers outperforming the Chiefs, they can absolutely win this game. And I think that the prices do not reflect the kind of probability of that happening.
Okay, could be a fun one to support. Moneyline bet on the Packers for Sunday Night Football. We'll go to best bets, and Judah, stick with you on this one again. We haven't covered so far the Colts at the Titans, so take it away here with your bet.
Yeah, I mean, like these teams are just in completely different tiers. I think the market is still pricing this Colts defense as one of, like a bottom 5 unit. That personnel is certainly pretty bad on paper, but this is just they have not played to a kind of bottom 5 unit all year. I think they're probably like a little bit below average. And the Titans, I think I was certainly intrigued by Will Levis's first couple of games. I think all of that has kind of faltered as of late. He does not seem like a quarterback who can create anything outside of structure. And right now his offensive line is a complete disaster. His receivers can't generate separation. He's a situation dependent quarterback in a really, really bad situation. And the Colts offense is going to score. I mean, they've outproduced expectations every week. I think they score more points than any other team relative to market expectations. The Titans' run defense has kind of really come alive the past 5 or 6 weeks. But I have full faith in Shane Steichen and Gardner Minshew, believe it or not, to kind of elevate the floor. And I don't think this Titans offense is going to be able to score. I see these two teams in fundamentally different tiers, and getting plus money on the less than 3 is something I'm certainly intrigued by.
Do you think the Colts secure one of those wild card spots? Like if the top 4 division leaders in the AFC stay the same, who are your 3 wild card teams?
I would go Texans, Colts, I don't know, Browns. Am I missing someone there?
Steelers and Bills are probably the realistic candidates.
Yeah, I guess Bills. I mean, I think the Bills are the best team by far. Their schedule is just daunting. I can't get behind Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating. That Bills pushing for the playoffs is crazy as well, obviously, after that last gas defeat against the Eagles. Drew, take it away with the Rams, who I guess, when they're good, they're really good like last week, but it's been an inconsistent year. They started the season off very well, but they're laying 4 points here against the Browns.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to explain the inconsistency. Injuries to key players. Yeah. They're healthy right now. As you look across the NFC and you do a thought experiment of who's the 4th best team, people will probably call out the Lions. Maybe some people pick, a surprise. I think it's very clearly the Rams. This Rams team is grading well in every important aspect of the game for this time of year, for this, this home stretch here. Stafford looks healthy. Stafford's just his general chemistry and the variability of the targets he has to work with, complemented now by an explosive rushing attack and a healthy offensive line. This Rams offense, I think, is going to be able to show up and show out against a Browns defense that, for whatever reason, plays less well on the road and is dealing now with some massive injuries. The absence of Ward was very, very clearly felt by the Browns last week in the secondary. The injury to Myles Garrett, I think, will impact his performance even if he is on the field. Expecting him to be as dynamic with his, a little bit less mobility in his shoulder. Okay, I'll pay to see it. And on the flip side, you have a humongous question mark at the quarterback position for Cleveland, up against the likes of Aaron Donald and a very, very frisky pass rush here for the Rams defense. So Rams just well coached, well coordinated. Raheem Morris is doing an incredible job. The development of Byron Young has been pretty awesome to see, as far as a kind of a player that can get things done in multiple parts of the field. And I think I think overall the defense is being a little bit slept on. And I don't think that whoever is the quarterback for the Browns is going to be able to take advantage of that. If this is Joe Flacco behind an offensive line with no tackles up against this Rams pass rush, then I'm going to be absolutely delighted watching this game. So I'm back on the Ramley. I think the Rams. I'm back in, man. It took a long time. I have fond memories of being in the Ramley in their Super Bowl run when they luck boxed their way into that Super Bowl. Don't kid yourself. Like they had, if the ball bounces a little differently and their path isn't exactly what it was, like they probably aren't winning that thing. But this year, I think they can be the NFC team that makes a little bit of noise. Right now, I'm currently projecting them to land 6th seed in the NFC, which would send them to the Detroit Lions for a 3-6 matchup between Jared Goff, McVay, and Stafford, and get all the whole bring everybody back. So that would be a ton of fun if that's ultimately what we get. And I don't know, Judah, what would you make Rams at Lions on Wild Card Weekend in the 3-6?
At their current situations, 3.
I like
I
it.
think I totally agree with you on the Rams, and they're also my biggest futures bet. So I really hope you're
okay.
Hope you're right.
Nice. What for NFC or for the whole enchilada?
75-1 NFC.
That's a big bet. That's a big number.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's funny. It's wild. We didn't talk about this. We didn't plan this. I bet them 6 plus 6, 5, 7, 4. So it's just 66-1. So you got a better number than me, but we're on the same page there.
Absolutely.
Next time there's a bad slate, let's just spend an hour talking about potential playoff matches, matchups, futures, because that's the best bit. Even Drew's like, "Oh, I have a team for you." It's back on the Ramway. That's a new one for.
I'm almost scared to ask Judah what his number would be with the Steelers in Miami in a potential 3-6 or something.
13.5.
13.5. Yeah,
and you'd be laying that
big number.
Yeah, it's like the Steelers Chiefs game, the wild card game from like 2 years ago.
Yeah, kind of is. Yeah, very similar.
Wild Card Weekend will be epic. It is every year, but I think whatever we end up, we'll be previewing that for sure. And my thanks to Drew, Judah, and Sam. Before we go, if you are watching the YouTube stream, do take 2 seconds to hit that like button. If you're watching live or watching back, we'll aim for around 50 likes on this one. Be much appreciated. Helps our content get out to a wider audience. We want to drum up the support ahead of playoff times, because these guys are brilliant to listen to when we're talking playoffs, Wild Card Weekend, that sort of thing. But my thanks to the guys. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Until then, enjoy the weekend's football. Bye-bye.